Thank you. Welcome to this meeting of the Scrutiny Management Board. The agenda papers and other relevant information for this meeting are available for public viewing on the Herefordshire Council website. The Council is streaming this meeting live on the Herefordshire Council YouTube channel and also making a recording. The recording will be available via the Council's website shortly after the meeting is concluded. Other attendees are permitted to film, photograph and record our public meeting, provided it does not disrupt the business of the meeting. If you do not wish to be filmed or photographed, please identify yourself so that anyone who intends to record the meeting can be made aware. To ensure that recording quality is maintained, could members speak as clearly as possible, keep background noise to a minimum, ensure that mobile phones and other devices are turned to silent, especially laptops. I have been hearing pings from a laptop before the meeting started, but hopefully that's been turned off. We have Councillor Jenny Bartlett, who is a member of the Scrutiny Management Board, Councillor Harry Bramer, who is a Cabinet member, and Liz Farr, who's Director of Education, Skills and Learning, joining us remotely today. I will ask each of them in turn to confirm that they can hear us and check that we can hear them. We'll start with Councillor Bartlett.
Yes, Chair. I can confirm I can see and hear you.
And we can see and hear you. Thank you. Councillor Bramer.
Yes, I can see and hear you, Councillor Proctor.
Thank you. And Liz.
Yes, good morning. I can see and hear you.
Thank you very much. As Councillor Bartlett is joining us remotely, she can take a full part in the discussions, but she won't be able to vote. We have a large number of attendees present. I don't intend to attempt to go around the room and do introductions. If people can remember, it would be great if you could just say who you are the first time that you speak. I imagine by the time we get into things that might be a bit difficult, but it would be helpful for people who are watching but cannot see the subtitles. Have we received any apologies for absence?
Yes, we've received apologies for absence from Councillor Simeon Cole. Tina Russell also sent apologies to Corporate Director of Children and Young People, but Liz is substituting for today, Liz Farr. Okay. Does anyone know of any other apologies?
Yes, Chair. Councillor Biggs, he had a bit of an accident and so he's recovering from that.
Do we have any substitutes?
No confirmed substitutes.
Do members of the committee have any declarations of interest in respect of any items on the agenda? Councillor Fagan?
Yeah, I'd just like to point out that I am trustee for Lanwarn Village Hall, which is in receipt of the Capital Spaces grant.
In a similar way, I'm not sure it's a declaration of interest, but members, everybody present should note that I'm a city councillor. The city council is a tenant of the town hall, which may come up in, of the county council at the town hall, which may come up in discussions of the capital programme, and I represent the City Council on the Stronger Towns Board, which obviously administers some capital funding which the county council is using. Okay, item 4 is to approve and sign the minutes of the meeting held on the 8th of December. Have we had any proposed corrections for accuracy?
None have been received.
Okay, can members of the board who were present at the meeting please vote to approve that the minutes be agreed as a correct record? All those in favour? Against? Abstain? Thank you. Have we received any written questions from members of the public?
One question was received from a member of the public. A response to that was published on the council website as a supplement to the agenda for this meeting.
And have we received any supplementary questions?
No supplementary questions have been received.
And I understand we have not received any written questions from members of the council?
No.
Okay, so we can move to the first of our substantive issue, which is the draft budget revenue. So just by way of introduction, I say that the purpose of our time here today is to assist the Cabinet to provide the best budget, recommend the best budget they can to Council. So as part of that, we'll ask them to explain how they have assembled the draft budget that's before us, and we may make recommendations that will help them improve their budget before it goes to Council, and it's Council that has, of course, the final decision. I have set out some timings in consultation with the Vice Chair, which I hope will mean that we have enough time to cover topics and enough time at the end to have a bit of a debate and agree recommendations. So I'm suggesting that we have about 30 minutes on the medium-term financial strategy, and then about 5 minutes for Treasury management, and if anyone has anything on DSG. Nobody has raised with me that they want to ask anything about DSG, and we will be considering the DSG deficit management plan soon. But so 30 minutes on medium-term financial strategy, then we'll have about 45 minutes on the savings proposals, then we should have a break, then I've allowed 55 minutes for discussion on the capital programme, and that would give us about 25 minutes to discuss and agree recommendations. So I'm just letting you know that I will try and keep us to those timings. Obviously, if the debate is going, I'll try and flex some of those timings to make sure that we cover the areas that members think are important. It will assist us. You can see that it's a very crowded room that we have today. If everybody, cabinet side, committee side, can be as pithy as they can be, and I apologise in advance if I have to cut members off to try and keep us to time. I will try not to do that arbitrarily, but we do have a limited amount of time. So if everybody could assist us all by making their points as succinctly as possible. I think if committee members are happy, we can take the context around the unfair funding review and the decisions that government has made that place the council in a difficult position as read, and then we can consider the budget within that context rather than spending a lot of time exploring that. I think that is well understood, and if I'm not seeing anyone disagreeing with that. So finally, Councillor Studder, if you could take just a minute or two. Obviously, members have read all the papers. There's a lot of information that has come out. Many members were in attendance at Cabinet or will have watched it back. We've had time to sit down with Rachel and her team to go through some of the detail. We've discussed lines of inquiry in ourselves, and that has led to more questions going back to Rachel and her team, and some more information being published. So I think we have a pretty good understanding of where we are, but if you'd just like to give us a minute or two to set the context, that would be great.
Thank you very much, Chair. So first of all, I'd like to address back to the current MTFS, which I can quote from the LGA peer review, that the MTFS, this is the one for this year, assumes the most likely scenario informed by best information available at the time of preparation based on the modelling undertaking in January 2025. So the current MTFS, the LGA said, is in good order. So as we say, last year's MTFS highlighted there was significant change expected due to fair funding review. We made it very clear that next year's MTFS is going to look very, very different to this year's. Cabinet then highlighted, I personally made a point highlighting it back in June, as soon as we were aware of the first opportunity of the impact of MTFS, of the Fair Funding Review 2, and that we would be presenting an updated MTFS. And of course, the 151 officer and the chief executive kept all group leaders and all members updated as information has been released from central government. So effectively, as I explained back on Tuesday, the MTFS figure, when you look at it at the minute, looks particularly perplexing, nearly 80 odd million pounds over the 3 years. But of course, what that doesn't address is the fact that beyond 2026, Cabinet's focus will be very much on developing the future financial strategy, and that's our immediate priority from both Rachel and I as of April the 1st this year, and we'll look at, given the outcome of the funding review, and we need to reduce reliance on government funding. As I've explained, funding comes from three bits: council tax, business rates, and SFA through central funding. That initially, We know that SFA is reducing, and as I explained through Fair Funding Review, it's going to be reducing even lower and lower, and by the end of the MTFS period, it's down to, I think, about 12 or 13%, and therefore we need to be looking at it, and that is part of what we say as Cabinet we need to therefore improve, and that's the requirement for the capital programme, because we need to grow the economy, and as part of that there will be the bypass, which will be the growth corridor, which will enable us to increase council tax, business rates and other things. So effectively, very challenging. Initially on the MTFS, next year, as we see 27-28, is a deficit of £20 million. As you all know, we are mandated to provide a balanced budget, and therefore what I can do is assure you that we will provide a balanced budget, albeit it's outside of our administration, but we'd like to think we'll be back in position again after the May 27 election, and therefore that deficit will be removed, and that impacts then onto the 28-29, that reduced by £20 million, so that the overall deficit is not 80, I think it's around about, is it 11? I think about 11 million? About £11 million. So that's the stop point where we are. It's not quite as bad as we all think.
Okay, I'm sure members will want to come in this, but I'll kick off just directly in response to that. So, what is striking is that you're proposing a medium-term financial strategy that has a very, very big funding gap in it, and as I don't want to be kind of rude here, but as I understand it, what you're saying is we'll work out how to fix that funding gap starting very urgently on the 1st of April, is that?
No, we're not proposing it, it's a forecast. MTFS are always forecasting.
Okay, so, and your proposal to solve that is that you'll start working on that from the 1st of April, is that?
Yes.
Can you give us an idea of the sorts of things you think the council will need to be doing to fill that gap?
We mentioned in para 3.4 of the MTFS, we provide a number of options. However, what would be very keen and very happy, as I say, if SMB can come up with other ideas, we'll be open and welcome anything at all. So thank you.
Just so I have Councillor Stark next. Just one more on that. So the reason that I'm sort of, for me, I'm pursuing this is so you might, for example, and I think it's outlined in your future, you might think that technology and digital transformation will play an important part in that, and so in order to facilitate that, you would want to make an investment in technology, in training, perhaps in bringing in new skills, and at the moment we're not making that investment in the next financial year. Won't be able to make that investment until the following financial year, and so we may be there's an opportunity cost by not being clearer now that that's the sort of investment that we're going to make.
That's not quite correct, Chair, sorry. In the next year's budget, we are proposing approximately 150k for transformation as part of our investment in ICT and DDAT. However, what we are saying now is we have learnt from previous experience where we had transformation as a stovepipe, as a directorate, and we led on that. As you're all aware, we've accepted experiences gained on that mean instead of having a director of transformation, we've now got a chief digital and information officer who works cross-cutting across all directorates to look at transformations. It's no longer in a silo, it's working across. And it's actually, Ed Garces is working with all of the corporate directors because it's everyone's responsibility for transformation.
Councillor Stark.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This is the first year that the Council has faced a 3-year settlement, which is a shame given that it's a terrible settlement, I think we all agree. And that exacerbates the position. I do hear, and I did listen to what you said, Councillor Stoddart at Cabinet, about your emphasis on growth, but that's a very unpredictable area. And even with the best will in the world, we don't know whether we'll get the funding for the bypass. So my question is, and I don't know where Cabinet in on this, because we've got a 3-year settlement that is so tight, recurrent savings become so important in terms of establishing them as early as possible. Has the Cabinet set up any exercise to look at where they can actually pin down recurrent savings that they can actually book over the whole MTF's period? Because I think to rely just on growth is a very risky strategy. And I fear that whether we like it or not, that we do need to look at that recurrent savings aspect and see what we can do about that. Thank you.
Well, obviously, as I've explained many, many times, including recently in the Q2 budget report and again next month in the Q3 budget report, the delivery of recurrent savings and those savings in year is vital. And as part of that, it's this administration that's put in place all of the tight controls, the monthly cost boards, the quarterly reports to, in fact, the monthly reports to Cabinet members, and also then the quarterly reports that I provide to Cabinet and to the wider community to explain where we are, and we do it in a very transparent manner of where we're getting to with savings. So we're looking at the measures are there, and they have been successful, that we have delivered those savings. For example, if we look at the savings that are forecast that we're projecting for 26-27, the 19.94 million pounds, we can confirm to you, and I think you've all been shared with you that information, that 34%, 1/3 of those savings will be delivered on day one, on the 5th of April this year. So I wouldn't be flippantly saying yes, we will deliver, but what I will say is we monitor, and the experience we've had, and we can demonstrate we have tight controls and we are delivering savings. I think Rachel would like to come in as well.
Just before Rachel comes in, we have had this issue over whether reserves are recurrent savings, because we know that some of the gap has been filled by the budget resilience reserve that we've been using. That is not a recurrent saving. The point I'm trying to get at, has the Cabinet pinned down and booked recurrent savings that will not rely on reserves and that will actually go forward in reducing the later years funding gap? That's what I'm trying to get at. Thank you.
So just to address a couple of the points that you raised there, Councillor Stark. So the Annex B to the MTFS, as you state, highlights our estimates of funding and expenditure over the medium-term financial period. It doesn't at present include any savings that will reduce that gap in future years. If you look at that bottom line, savings, efficiencies and mitigations, we've got the 19.9 in 26-27, and the row for future years does not include a figure. As we work through, and as you'll note in paragraph 3.4, one of the key principles of our future financial strategy is to begin to develop those savings proposals for future years from the 1st of April. And one of the key things that we'll be doing in one of our biggest cost pressure areas in the Community Wellbeing Directorate will be working with external specialists to support that development of savings proposals. In 25-26, we brought an updated MTFS in September, once we knew that the outcome of the Fair Funding Review was likely to be unfavourable. And through this budget report, we have committed to presenting an update midway through the year in future years. So as we start to develop those future year savings, I anticipate that they could be built in where we have sufficient information to confirm that they're robust and deliverable, to start to update that MTFS period part way through the year as part of our routine financial planning arrangements. In terms of your other point, the use of reserves is not a recurrent measure, and we've been explicit about that when we've referred to it as a measure in our budget proposals. The MTFS recognises that that is not a recurrent position, and therefore the 27-28 position builds back in that one-off use of reserves, and so that's reflected in the gap. And again, from the 1st of April, the key priority will be to mitigate and to develop proposals for the two reserve measures that are assumed in the 26-27 revenue budget, and build that together as part of the plan to balance future years' budgets.
Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, following up on the Councillor Stark's point then, we have a £1.4 million recurrent saving that wasn't delivered last year, associated with the service provision from our partner Hoople, which sits as a gap in this year's budget. How is that being represented or dealt with in the budget figures that we have before us now for next year?
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. So you'll note that in the Q2 report that was presented to Cabinet with the forecast outturn position for 25-26, we have highlighted that brought forward saving from 24-25 as currently at risk. We continue to work through options to meet that savings target with Hoople. We are currently having discussions with them about that, how that might be met, and that will therefore feed into the 26-27 budget, those discussions, and in terms of recurrent delivery of that saving.
So are we being presented with a budget that includes that as an unmet shortfall, or could you point us to where in the budget figures we've got before us now that 1.4 million is actually being covered?
So the outturn report highlights that as a risk in the current year forecast, and this budget includes clearly as an assumption that all savings will be delivered in 25-26. Where savings are not delivered in 25-26, that will have an impact, and we'll continue to monitor that through the management of the 25-26 outturn position and those ongoing negotiations to deliver that savings target.
So are you telling us that that 1.4 million gap in this year's budget is assumed, however it is, given that we're in the last quarter of the year now, however it is you're yet to find a way forward on that, whatever the way forward that you find is going to deliver a recurring £1.4 million saving as an assumption on the figures that you've got here?
I'm not giving assurance that we have a recurrent solution. I'm giving my assurance that we are engaging and working towards delivering that target in year and understanding the impact of that on future years.
So how is that £1.4 million represented in the figures we have here that are being put before us as a balanced budget?
So if I can just test my understanding, the base budget for so this budget here assumes that all of the savings, so the budget for the draft budget assumes that all of the savings for this year will have been delivered.
That's
so if
true,
they are
and
not
that's
delivered,
explicit in the
they will
report.
appear next year as a budget pressure. Is that?
As has been the case in previous years.
And that, so that's it'd be interesting. I know Councillor Sullivan, so it will be interesting to understand how the Cabinet is mitigating that specific risk, but it also highlights the kind of potential snowball risk in the medium-term financial strategy. So if we aren't able to deliver all of the savings for 26-27, they will be added to the next year, which we know we also have to make. And so, I mean, this is not, I guess, a surprise, but I think we would all be very interesting to understand how Cabinet is thinking about those risks.
So I've made it very clear every time I've sat in this room and spoke and give quarterly updates that it's important to all of us to deliver all of the savings in each year. I'll be delivering the Q3 update next month, as I just said, and I understand at the minute that 6.9% of our current savings are actually at risk, 6.9%. The rest have either been delivered or in actual delivery. So yes, I agree there is that 1.4 million sits as part of that 6.9%, but we have steps in place. We delivered previously and we'll deliver again this time.
Okay, Councillor O'Driscoll.
Thank you. Just want to come back at you, Councillor Stoddart. I'd admire your bullish attitude towards the future years. So you're sitting here and you're saying you're confident that the vast majority of all the savings next year will be delivered. You're also confident that the 20 million in 27-28, the 31 million in 28-29, and the 31 million in 29-30 will be nowhere near that figure, because we're going to be able to drastically reduce that and find savings for each year that will minimise that to something like, I think you said, 11 million over the course. I'm just keenly aware of the conversations we've had over the last few months and how hard it's been to find the savings for next year. What pain are you imagining this council is going to go through in resident, and what's the frontline impact on resident services going to be? Are you really confident we're going to be able to deliver this? Because it does feel a little bit like a work of fiction, I'm afraid.
Well, straight away again, as I say, so we've delivered 19.4 before, we're delivering 20 million next year, and we're looking again for another 20 million the year after. That we'll talk through on savings later on, when my colleagues will talk through the details of their programmes. But what we are looking at is in those areas. So by removing the £20 million from the first year of the MTFS, that has a cumulative impact across the next 2 years, which delivers and reduces the 81 down to approximately 11 million.
I think we should avoid terms like work of fiction. We're talking about some information that's been provided to us by the council.
I withdraw that. It's just a turn of phrase. It looks a little bit like. I'm just concerned that it's been so painful to get to where we are now, and I just want a realistic picture for residents of what it's going to look like moving forward.
Leader?
Thank you, Chairman, for highlighting that. I just want to, and thank you, Councillor O'Driscoll, for withdrawing that comment. I just want to stress that I take exception to that type of terminology, because behind the scenes, we have huge amounts of work being undertaken by directorate after directorate after directorate that face financial cliff edges because of the service delivery we need to deliver. And we've been working for nearly 6 months on the precipice that fairer funding has provided us. So to say all of this hard work is a work of fiction, I think that there's the danger that we don't really assess properly the amount of thought that's gone into all of these proposals. And so, out of respect for all the officers that have put all of this time and energy in and are still committed to delivering services, frontline services that we desperately rely on to keep people safe, all of these proposals have been put forward in a way that is very, very challenging, and so this is our best estimates that we can, and directors will go into more detail about that. So perhaps it's better to have a discussion about how directors are confident that these savings that are being proposed are the right things to target.
We will come to savings, but let's the remark being withdrawn. Let's not get into any more depth there. I have Councillors Stark, Davis, and Harvey. Just one note, please don't address me as chairman. The Constitution calls me chairperson. Chair is fine. But before we get to Councillor Stark, I just want to get back to this risk of rolling savings. One of the recommendations in the corporate peer review was that the MTFS should undertake some scenario planning. So it currently has a scenario which is based on a set of assumptions. So can you explain why you disagree with the recommendations of the corporate peer review? Because it seems that some scenarios where not all savings are made in each year seems like a realistic scenario that could be modelled would be useful. Sorry, that was a question to Councillor Stoddart.
So thank you, Chair. So what we've got is our MTFS presents the most likely and robust position and includes sensitivity analysis. So what we do is we highlight the risk and the sensitivity impact in changes in funding, inflation, demand, and interest rates. We have looked across a wide range of other councils in their MTFSs for scenario planning, and we have seen none. And therefore, if SMB are aware of any, please make us aware. What we do, however, in line with other councils which we have checked with, Worcestershire, Gloucestershire, Shropshire and Warwickshire, we model a range of variables and multiple permutations. And that's how we actually look at we would refer to as scenario planning. What I would say is that we've got strong assurance from our external auditors that our financial planning arrangements, which includes that sensitivity and risk impacts, are effective.
I have Councillors Stark, Davis, Harvey and Fagan, and that may be all we can fit in this section on the MTFS.
Yes. To be fair to the committee, and I do agree about watching how we view things, but this 11 million is quite an interesting figure to come up with, Councillor Stoddart. Is there any way the committee can actually get a breakdown of how that 11 million would be arrived at? Because it still seems to me that some of that will depend on reserves being used in later years, and that must have a negative impact on our reserves. So to say we will get it down to 11 million is excellent, but if it's not recurrent savings, then it's just the use of reserves. Thank you.
If I can just add some clarity on that, I think what Councillor Stoddart is referring to is the legal requirement to set a balanced budget in each financial year. So as we stand today and we look forward at the MTFS in 27-28, we've highlighted, based on a series of professional judgments and the best information we have at the point that we are preparing this document, and that includes assumptions around growth in services, inflation, pay award, as well as the impact of plan changes in directorates. As we stand today, we have assessed the current gap for 27-28 to be just over 20.5 million. In that requirement to set a balanced budget, the Cabinet priority will be to deliver recurrent savings, as well as delivering those from 26-27 in full. The knock-on impact of setting a balanced budget built on recurrent savings whilst recognising the scale of that challenge would be that in future years the base budget would therefore be reduced by that savings that are taken out of the base budget, and therefore that would reduce future years' gaps. So the 11 million, to be clear, there's a £31 million proposed funding gap, an estimated funding gap at this point in 28-29. The development and delivery of savings of 20 million next year would result in a reduction in the base budget in 28-29. So what the MTFS does is present a transparent assessment of the gap in each financial year, but does not assume the delivery of a balanced budget and the knock-on impact. So this is a worst case scenario. It is not suggesting that an £11 million a reduction to £11 million is an easy task. We recognise the scale of the challenge, but that would be the impact of being able to deliver £20 million of savings again next year. Yeah. Yes, completely, if they are recurrent, yeah.
Okay, Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Is there anything that Herefordshire Council can do to make their concerns about the Fair Funding Review 2.0 to central government that will assist us, therefore, meeting the MTFS challenges that we have in the future years?
We did say that we would take that side of things as read, but if you want to be very quick about answering that question.
Clearly, we've lobbied long and hard through the RSN, through the LGA, through the County Council Network, and the committee and the Council of County Treasurers, including our MPs. We've made it very clear. We emphasised that effectively, very clearly in the report, that by 28-29, so the last year of the MTFS, the gap between urban and rural councils will be 40%. We are doing that. We will constantly and always keep up the lobbying and the pressure, and that includes through our MPs and through other groups. Rachel, anything you'd further like to say?
Go on then.
Chair, just briefly, yes, our chief executive will be going to see as senior civil servants as possible in MHCLG, and that's next week, I believe.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harvey is next.
Thank you, Chair. We talked about the risks that are identified in Table 4 of the of the MTFS, and it's good to see those there, and it's good to see that they are they're also assessed in terms of likelihood and impact. One of those risk sections, and I know these are very top level because there must be many, many more risks than this, but these are in broad groups. Interest and inflation, obviously. Clearly, there are global events are very volatile at the moment, including threats of significant tariffs being placed on UK and other nations. Do we have a picture of the degree to which our business is sensitive to and impacted by tariffs in our own operations or in our partners and suppliers' supply chains? And given that this is not something that's just risen up out of the blue, tariffs have been a theme during the last 12 months of threats. How are we representing that as a risk, and where is it showing in our thinking in the MTFS? And my second question is, given the explanations that we've received to earlier questions to do with invisible risks from savings not being delivered this year that will roll into next year as additional pressures, if we've got a £6 million set of current year savings that are showing in the quarterly reports as being at risk, and we're now in Q4, would it not be prudent to be somehow recognising that as a risk in the way that we're presenting the figures, rather than suddenly coughing to that as an immediate problem when the Q1 budget report for the coming year gets published, back end of the summer?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. So the first one I'd refer to the risk in tariffs. You will recall that I've updated at the last report on the street on our street risk management approach. We have updated two risks, one of which was inflation, and the other one, I'm afraid, escapes me. But we updated and we explained why that was updated, why we'd raised the risk on that, which addresses that issue. Clearly, we have no control on external events like that. What we do is we monitor them and we actually make everyone aware, and we update our risks appropriately. On the invisible savings delivered that Councillor Harvey is alluding to, I would remind her that effectively I mentioned the 6.9% is currently at risk. The rest has all been delivered. Whilst we are currently at the end of January, we're not at Q4 yet. I'll be reporting Q3 next month, which I will hopefully be reducing that figure and demonstrating we are delivering and accounting for that as we go through.
I don't think that's quite addressing Councillor Harvey's point, which I think is quite interesting, and is not simple. But if I don't want to put words in your mouth, if I understand what I took from your point was, there is a risk that in any year there's a risk that some savings will not be delivered, and at the moment we aren't reflecting that risk in things like the MTFS going forward. Sorry, please.
Yeah. Yes. To expand on that, we're presented with an MTFS which is looking ahead 3 years. We are actually living in Q4 of this financial year, even though we always report quite significantly and frustratingly in arrears. I understand that you as the Cabinet Member for Finance will have a better picture of how things are looking right now, living in Q4 of this financial year, than is being made public through the quarterly reporting at this juncture. It seems reasonable to me that if we are looking forward 3 years in this MTFS, we have a sufficient picture of the risk presented right now to next year's budget by undelivered savings this year to be reflecting that in the risks that we put forward in a document which looks ahead 3 years. We're only asking for a look ahead on savings which are likely to roll into next year as undelivered of 2 months.
I'll refer again back to the fact that we have informed you at Q2 that the savings that are a risk at 6.9%, when we go to Q3 and into Q4, that the plan and the aspiration and the effort that we're all expending is that they will be made and we will deliver on budget.
Okay, this does seem like a potential recommendation that the committee may want to make. So we can get to that. Councillor Fagan, I think will have the last word on MTFS.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just assuming that in terms of savings from the Children's Directorate, can I ask that question in another?
We will be moving on to savings.
Fine. That's fine. Thank you. It's just Councillor Stoddart mentioned the need to grow the economy in Herefordshire, and obviously a bypass, if it happens, is a long way ahead. But what we currently have, the biggest shock to Herefordshire's economy in the past few years really has been the moratorium on building in North Herefordshire, house building, and so the question is really in terms of that, are we doing absolutely everything that we can to address I know it's not described as a formal moratorium, but the impact on the backlog of housing development in North Herefordshire, which has had a massive knock-on effect on the building and construction industry. I know that Councillor Lester said that the council would be writing to the government later this month, but it seems to me that there's an area here where actually in the very shorter term we could actually make an impact on the economy of Herefordshire if we address this problem now that we know that the greatest allocation of phosphates actually does not come from housing but comes from agriculture. So are we doing everything we can to address this?
Okay. Who wants to answer this?
Well, Chair, thank you. It's a great question, and the moratorium on house building because of the phosphates issue has had a huge impact on housing delivery in the north of Herefordshire, absolutely. And the solution lies in the phosphate mitigation measures, which the last administration started with the wetland schemes. But I think Councillor Swinglehurst is probably a lot more qualified to answer that question.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. You're quite right, of course. You're absolutely right. In terms of the the impact of Herefordshire economy, the cost of the so-called moratorium is estimated to be about 100 million annually. So since its inception, that's now several hundred million. Are we doing everything we can? I think we are. I think we were the first councillors, and absolute credit to the previous administration, to get the integrated wetlands mitigation going. So where we lead, others are now following, and we're now on our third iteration of that, and looking also at other mitigation. Of course, at the moment we have just the planning and infrastructure bill having just come through. There will be environmental development plans that Natural England will be bringing forward, I think, for the LUG. We've yet to see the impact of that and how that works in terms of the Nature Recovery Fund, to the idea of strategic mitigation being somewhat removed from the impact. But that's not in our gift. We're watching and seeing how that's going to develop. And at the same time, we are in constant engagement with our house builder SMEs, having meetings with them, exploring all the potential around private mitigation schemes and other ways in which we can create credits and allow our house builders to get on and build the homes that people need in the north of the county.
Thank you very much. My Vice Chair has also reminded me that his Scrutiny Committee made recommendations on this point quite recently. That's, I think, all we're going to have time for on the MTFS. I'm keen to move on to looking at savings proposals, but, and I may live to regret this, I have thought that there wouldn't be much time needed for any points on Treasury management. But if anyone has any points on Treasury management, please raise them now. Okay, thank you very much. So we've got about 45 minutes, hopefully, to talk about savings proposals. In particular, I think we'd like to, in stages, look at the deliverability of the savings proposals, the enablers, so what the council needs to do to make these things happen, what the impact will be on service users on the county as a whole. If you want to just talk to the savings proposals very briefly, Councillor Stoddart, that's fine. If you don't want to, we can jump straight into it. That's okay. So I'll kick off with a question, if I may. So I imagine we are going to spend some time looking at deliverability, because obviously, in the discussion we've just had, is we are in the situation where we can see over the next 3 years that we need to keep making further savings. So any savings that are not delivered will have a sort of compounding effect moving forwards. The savings proposed for this year are very significant. The council has not, over the time that I'm aware of, delivered savings of this level in year. So what is different this year that gives you confidence that this level of savings can be delivered?
So I'll start first of all by this year's Q2 reports highlights £3.9 million in years approved savings expected and delivered, and 1.4 million has been brought forward at risk. The delivery of savings targets and savings whilst managing increasing demand for services is very challenging, and I'll have to admit it is not just challenging, it's exceptionally challenging. We must, however, balance maintaining service and reducing costs responsibly, so that we ensure we deliver the best for Herefordshire in everything that we do, but also safeguard the council's financial position. So, for example, when we were sitting, myself, Rachel, the leader, with Councillor Gandhi, we sat and looked at community wellbeing, went through all the lines, and I mentioned it in my budget setting statement. You know, the services that we deliver for adult social care, we're looking at from a statutory requirement, and we came up and discussed that actually these are the services that actually people, primarily from the baby boomer generation, but they're the ones who have worked their whole lives. They have delivered, they have worked hard, some have worn the country's uniform, etc., and now they turn to their country through us for services to help them in their old age. And therefore it's not just a statutory requirement on us, it's a moral obligation for us to do it. So they became almost a bit like red lines for us, and therefore we're looking at where else can we make savings and go through. And that's a sort of level over a number of hours of discussion that we looked at with each of these things. So please, all of you understand that the measures that we have adopted have not been taken in a flippant or light-handed or loose way. This is we have expended an inordinate amount of effort and debate and discussion to achieve these. Rachel, is there anything else you'd like to say?
It's been a challenging process this year, but it has been a process that started after we closed down last year's financial outturn position. So a collaborative process across directors and cabinet members. You'll see the themes in the savings delivery proposed for next year across controlling costs, managing demand, increasing income and delivering efficiencies. We committed to providing some more detailed information around the activity proposed to deliver those savings, and I know that directors and cabinet members will be happy to share some more information in this meeting. We've also done a high-level assessment of the profile of delivery of those savings. You'll see that in the information that was published as a supplement yesterday, and we expect that at our current assessment, 6.9 million of that proposed 20 million will be delivered from day one. So that provides us some assurance over that challenging target next year. As we move through into delivery of those savings next year, we of course have the well-established now Directorate Budget Board meetings that sit on top of the individual arrangements within each directorate. We also have savings boards that take place regularly to specifically monitor the activity and risks in delivery of those savings, and that then feeds through to Directorate Budget Monitoring with that reporting to address those items at risk. Where we're not able to deliver savings in year recurrently, obviously we seek to mitigate, but also where savings are successfully delivered, we also seek to stretch those targets and maximise on that success. In the budget reports that go to full council on the 13th of February, I'm required to produce a Section 25 report which considers the robustness of the estimates within the revenue budget and the adequacy of reserves. And in making that assessment, I will be considering the delivery of in-year savings in 25-26 and the robustness of the estimates that have been put forward for the 26-27 budget.
Okay. I have Councillors Crockett, Thomas and Stark. So we'll kick off with Councillor Crockett.
Thank you, Chairperson. Did you say I've got 45 minutes? Anyway, I could, but I'm not going to. You'll be glad to hear. So I'm going to be looking at community wellbeing, obviously, because that's my really strong area of interest. I think we've already acknowledged that we've got huge financial challenges, and this keeps getting worse and worse every year. So, you know, hats off to you guys who are having to deal with it. We continue to stress our concerns to government, as you've already noted, and we have strong support from our North Herefordshire MP, and I've seen her many times in the House stating those points. So, the position of community wellbeing, which is proposed, is a saving of 7.3 million. Oh my goodness, where do we go? This is a huge task and ask. We have 17 identified descriptions or activities on Appendix C, and as Rachel's already said, it's costs, income, demand and efficiencies. But I was quite surprised, to be honest. I don't know whether Hilary you want to comment on this, but out of those 17, only 4 triggered a full equality impact assessment. And when you look at them all, they're quite startling, I think, and I'm not sure whether you're confident that these are really, really accurate. So, you know, just have a look at that at some point would be good. Assessments due to these identified changes would affect the public directly or indirectly. So again, I ask you to revisit that. My concerns are triggered by the value of these proposals, such as the first one. That's a real 2.5 million ask. Can I ask you who you will be engaging with as a partner and how this will improve value for money? That's the first question. I'll let you comment on that one first.
So the first saving relates to the way in which we commission care home placements, which is nursing home, residential, supported living in the market. So it's about how we engage with the market generally. It's not one individual provider. What we are seeking to do is move away from the historic practice where we've done spot purchasing of placements, which doesn't allow us to control costs well, so that we move to up to 50% of our placements being contracted on a longer basis. Old-fashioned language would be block contracts. Prefer to think of it as partnerships so that we can actually flex that. We can work with our care homes, with our providers, to ensure that the placements that we're commissioning through those arrangements meet the needs of residents, because residents' needs change over time. So whilst we're seeking longer term contracts with our providers which give us control over costs, we also want to build flexibility into those partnership arrangements that they enable in the market across those range of provision. So it's a lot of placements, it's a lot of money that's going in, and we are you know, we actively engage with the market, we're actively engaged with our providers to ensure that we can move to a different arrangement that gives more stability to them as businesses, so that if you know that as a business you've got a set amount of money that you're getting over a long period of time, that enhances your viability and your stability as a business. But from a cost control point of view, it enables us as a council to better control our costs, as well as meeting need, which has to be pivotal to that. It is a big number, I absolutely accept. We've done a lot of analysis, financial modelling over the last 4 or 5 months, working really closely to do that, working closely with finance to enable us to model that. And we believe we've got the strong delivery plans that will enable us to do that.
Thank you. That's really encouraging. But I just would like to know whether those conversations you have with those providers are positive. You know, I can't wait till we've built our own so that we can provide a more in-house service. But I just wonder how that is being accepted, because we are going to be looking through a task and finish group on our committee to look at, you know, who are we looking after? Why are we looking after them? How many are going to be coming up to Herefordshire Council's door in the near future and the long-term future?
So we are working closely, they are being viewed positively, and we are working through that. You referred to people who are coming to our door, and one of our savings, and not to preempt your questions, Councillor Crockett, but one of our savings is around improving our offer for self-funders. So that is both to ensure that is both around maximising income, but it's also giving us a bit of a forewarning of when people's income might start to diminish, so that we are ready, we're not on the back foot in terms of people suddenly appearing at our door whose income has gone beneath the capital threshold. So a number of these savings, whilst they look like 17 individual lines, they do have a link, a relationship, whatever word you want to use, that means that we are looking at it as a whole programme. So this isn't just about an individual line. We are looking at it as a whole and what those interdependencies, that was the word I was trying to find, what those interdependencies are between them all.
Absolutely, nothing's in isolation, and I think we all accept that. So you're talking with people, that's great. We will be talking with people, that's great. So the next sort of big issue is C3, C4, which are the community services we support, and you know, we are the major shareholder of Hoople, is that right? Yeah. So with those two, so that's £650,000 that we are needing to save. Again, are we speaking well with Hoople? Have they had the conversations? Have you suggested to them ways of saving that, or have they said to you? Because I think it's really important that we're all talking together, and if we, any member of this council, can help anybody improve services, we need to let you know. So it's the same with our partners.
Just before you answer that, I've got quite a list of members wanting to come in. So if you've got any other questions,
Sorry, Chairman.
Are you happy that we can stop after this question? If there's time, we could come back to you. Carry on.
So I can confirm we've been working closely with Hoople on both of those savings. In terms of the community, and also with Shaw, but in particular of those two with Hoople. In terms of the community equipment contract, as you know, that's a new service that we moved to Hoople in very quick order in the summer. And the savings that are proposed there have been jointly developed between both ourselves and were initially suggested actually by Hoople themselves, based on what they saw from the service they'd inherited. In terms of the learning disability service, again, that has been talked through with Hoople, and we understand what we could do. Some of this may be about Hoople securing additional bed spaces that enables us to reduce our reliance on spot purchasing. So it isn't necessarily about removing money from Hoople, and indeed not about that. So that we have worked very closely with Hoople. We continue to work very closely with Hoople. This isn't a again, in the spirit of partnership. So we're really clear that that partnership working cuts across all of the work that we do. We work in partnership with Hoople. They are a provider and a supplier, but they are also a partner to enable us to deliver the savings that we've set out.
Thank you. And can I just have one last thing, please, Chairman?
Very quickly.
Chairperson, sorry. Right, okay, so at the moment, we all know that the CQC came in September to look at our services, adult services. So we're still waiting a report, and I just wonder, I don't know whether this is for you, Councillor Lester or Hilary, when we get that report, have we had the report? Did we have a preliminary? But when we get it officially, are you going to have to revisit all of your savings? And if so, are you going to come back to us at Scrutiny Management Board, or will that go through Cabinet, etc.?
We haven't had the final report. Some additional information has been requested from the CQC, which we have supplied. We do not have the final report. We don't know the final rating. What I will say is that we provided a very thorough and robust self-assessment to the CQC, which set out both our strengths and those areas where we knew that there is more plans that we need to strengthen. That has all played back to us from CQC through the site visit. So I remain confident that anything they put in the report should reflect what we had in our self-assessment. What we had in our self-assessment is reflected in our wider transformation programme. Obviously, these savings are part of a wider transformation programme. So I do not envisage that we will need to revisit any of our savings proposals or our existing improvement plans. I can't legislate for what they might say, but I haven't heard nothing, or I'm aware of nothing, either through the site visit or any additional information requested, that would make me need to change anything. Clearly, if we do, that would be in consultation with the Cabinet member, the leader, and then through scrutiny to monitor that as we go forward.
That's really good to hear. Thank you very much.
Okay, I have a very long list of people to come in. Councillor Lester, can you be very quick?
Yes, I was just going to reiterate. I was just going to make the point about the self-assessment, and we know ourselves well, so that these savings are based on that. But the director has answered far more eloquently than I can on that matter.
I have Councillors Thomas, Stark, Bartlett, Harvey, and O'Driscoll. Can you, Councillor Gandhi, very quickly on this point?
Thank you, Chair. Just to reiterate some of the comments that were made by Councillor Crockett. Yes, we have to close the funding gap, and we know that there will be an impact in some form in the 2026-2027 budget. But we have not reduced our service levels, and I think we need to be clear about that. We have safeguarded all of the people who are the most vulnerable and need our care and support. And the areas that we've looked at, yes, they are challenging, but we recognise that we need to close that gap, because otherwise the impact on the following financial year will be even greater. But I can assure Cabinet, Scrutiny Board that we have done everything we can, and I actually am a bit concerned when Councillor Crockett made issues about, can you look at this again? I didn't exactly understand what she wanted us to look at, but we have not actually impacted our services on those that are the most vulnerable and require our care and support.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Thomas.
Well, it sounds like an awful lot of work has been done by all opposite. Now, I'm going to sound a bit like a reform candidate or whatever. I'm not. Far from it. But have you started to consider, we have obligatory things we have to do, and we know all those, or know most of those, but are you looking, because basically I'm being told, what I'm assuming, that it's the same model slimmed down. Have we looked at reducing the model? In other words, doing away with services that, yes, we'd love to have in a good financial state, but we're not. So are we looking seriously at some of the other services we provide? Because I feel that there is quite a bit of quite a few services we can do away with, but I'm not au fait with what is legally obliged to us to do and what isn't.
Sorry, Chair. Can we have clarification on what service you're specifically talking about? Is it Adults Directorate?
No, it's not. I'm sorry, but the savings is on the savings sheet. We are talking about more than adults, are we not?
So maybe, as I interpret it, this is about the approach that you have taken. So Councillor Stoddart talked about trying to protect the most vulnerable, but there are a range of services the council doesn't need to provide. So how have you approached that?
To address your point, Councillor Thomas. So in this summer, we looked at a thing called we refer to it as the Hampshire model. And what Hampshire did was they looked at a lot of their services from the prospect of statutory, mandatory, discretionary, and one other, enabling in principle. So we looked at all those, and that was the principle that every cabinet portfolio member with their directorate looked at all of their services. And that's where I allude back to the point I mentioned, sitting with us in the room with Hilary was there as well, as we went through all the community wellbeing services. Whilst it was statutory, we felt...
Yes. So you will see from the savings that have been proposed that there are some services that we've taken a decision to try to scale back on, and there are some services where we are looking to raise some income. But ultimately, I go back to the fact that even some of those services which are not mandatory are really important to people in the community. And if we don't provide those services, even though they may not be mandatory, we end up with a situation where somebody gets to a stage where they come to our front door because they have got to a stage where they need adult social care. So it is important for us to make sure that some of the services which we provide, which other councils may not provide, that allow prevention, which is the main aim of what we're trying to do, is to prevent people coming to the front door at a stage where there is no option but for them to have domiciliary care or residential care, which costs us a huge amount of money. So I understand what Councillor Thomas is saying, but we have to look at this in the round, and things that are on here which are not statutory, but without them we would be overwhelmed.
Okay, thank you very much. So I have Councillors Stark, Bartlett, Harvey, O'Driscoll and Fagan. Councillor Stark.
Yes, thanks. A couple of themes that I return to every year when it comes to the budget. One is how we present the stats. Another one is how we are impacting on economy and environment. And I know that Councillor O'Driscoll have an interest here as well. If we look at the summary table where we have 4 columns: control of costs, manage demand, increase in income and delivering efficiencies. Right away, for the reader, you cannot pin down what actually applies to the current savings and what actually applies to the use of reserves. In a way, I would prefer somewhere along the line, and it will be around the control of costs and efficiencies, to know how much of that is down to the current savings which has actually been made and how much of it is to reserves being used to actually reduce it. The second thing is about economy and environment again. Economy and environment, you're asking that directorate to make almost the same level of savings as community wellbeing. And yet the budgets are vastly different. Did the Cabinet ever think about applying a straight percentage reduction to all directorates regardless? That has happened in the civil service before, where we suddenly turn around and say, we've got a financial crisis here, every directorate has to make a 10% cut. Was that even proposed by Cabinet or not?
Just before you jump in, my remembrance is that in the current year, we inherited some savings that were not made in the previous year through transformation, and those were largely delivered by exactly what Councillor Stark has said, by basically applying it was a 2 or 3% cut to each. So it's you have in fact proved that that is a way that you can deliver savings.
If I can just come back on your question, Councillor Stark, on the presentation of the table. All of the proposals within this 20 million are expected to be recurrent reductions on base budget. None of these proposals relate to use of reserves. What we are suggesting to balance the budget is that we have £20 million worth of revenue budget savings, and then we are planning to use £3.2 million of the business rates risk reserve, which was established for that very purpose, to mitigate the risk in volatility in government funding. And alongside that, we have set up a £7.1 million contract inflation fund reserve. So the savings that are presented here, we haven't included a column to show which reserve will be funding them, because that's not the source of the saving. In terms of that application of savings across the different directorates, around about June, July every year, I have the pleasurable task of going into CLT and highlighting what at that point the expected funding gap might be and the challenge for the savings target. And we can cut that in a number of different ways, and have done in previous years. And that has in previous years been that directorate's proportion of the total net budget, and therefore that is applied to the savings target. This year, as councillors have offered to you in explanation, we took a different approach, and we looked at the services that each directorate delivered in order to understand opportunities to deliver savings. And that was considered alongside the improvements and progress that each directorate was making in their own individual journeys. So a holistic approach. It's not always appropriate just to apply that strict target to each directorate. We need to understand them individually. And just in response to your comment around economy and environment, obviously we changed the presentation, and in the directorate budget monitoring reports and in the cabinet reports, that includes home to school transport. So you'll see that the savings are larger than in previous years in that area, because there are a significant volume of them that relate to home to school transport, which historically has not been in the E&E budget.
I'm still confused, because when I look at the detail, I can see that reserves have been redirected to actually achieve some of the savings that are shown as part of the 19 million. And you have talked about the budget resilience reserve being used as well, and also the business rates reserve. I'm just totally confused now, Chair, and I'm not sure what we're looking at in terms of recurrent savings or not.
So, to test my understanding, the £20 million is savings. That will come out of base budget. If that's delivered, that will be recurrent. Then there is going to be an extra £10 million use of reserves to mitigate, because we actually have to take £30 million out this year. Am I correct in that?
The maths is correct, but I'd like to correct myself as well in reference, sorry, Councillor Stark, you do rightly refer to some specific savings proposals in respect of a reapplication of existing reserves to cover planned spend in 26-27. That planned spend relates to additional money that was provided through the final settlement a couple of years ago in respect of drainage, public rights of way and Lensman services, which we are planning to maintain. The funding that was provided to support that expenditure was one-off, but we've committed to providing that last year recurrently and again this year, and we'll consider how we do that and the balance on those reserves going forward. So there are a small element, you are right, that rely on that reprioritisation of reserves this year, but the majority of these savings are not movements from reserves. They rely on activity that will deliver recurrent savings.
I mean, it does seem like a proposal that would assist council would just be to break those out, because if they are application of reserves, then I would expect to see them in that pile rather than in the recurrent savings pile. Councillor Bartlett, then it will be Councillor Harvey, then Councillor O'Driscoll, then Councillor Fagan. Councillor Bartlett, please.
Thank you, Chair, and apologies that I'm not well enough to join you in person. And thank you to the finance team, Rachel's team, and everybody's hard work that they've put in. I think partly my concerns, and I'm looking at page 64, which is the overall budget position statement, certainly for community well-being. One of the key things that I'd like to just to note really is on our list of key capital projects. Hear me out. I know that we're supposed to be doing capital later. On our key capital projects that we're not actually still listing that we're going to build our own care home. Because as we've heard, we've got a huge amount of pressure. So that's one point. In terms of the pressure that we've got on the services to provide the amount of care that we need to, and that's statutory care, not just what we want to do. We've got, again, on our Community Wellbeing Directorate savings proposals, partnership working, voluntary and community sector, SURE contract, and those types of partnerships that we need to maintain and make better. What I don't understand, from having been around, quite a lot of these conversations for many, many, many years, is what is different now in those conversations with our partners and care providers that is different, that makes us feel confident that this time we will be able to make these savings that we've not always been able to make before. That's my second point. And my third point is very much around talk community and reorganisations of the way that we do things. A lot of our savings would appear to be reliant on removing posts again. And are we confident that we will have the skill set to manage the pressures that are against us? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I can see Councillor Gandhi has her pen up. So
I'll just comment on talk community. Yes, we are proposing, but it will be going out to consultation. We are proposing to make some savings within talk community. Part of this is because the children's community development roles are transferring into the children's directorate. And they're not being removed, but they are being removed from within talk community. This follows a period of mapping and review of children's and young people's community-based youth provision across the county, and this is something that the Children's Directorate wanted to happen. Locating the roles within children's services creates a stronger alignment with the Families First, the community hubs, the family hubs, and wider children's early help systems, supporting a clearer pathway for families. The existing partnerships and the relationships built by officers will be retained, and with continuity of delivery maintained during the transition. Whether we like it or not, the impact on adult social care for this authority is huge. And so therefore we have no choice but to concentrate our efforts, as they were when I think talk community was first introduced, on reducing demand in adult social care, and also working with people to prevent them coming to the front door in the first place. And children's services believe that they are able, while taking back their staff, to deliver the services that they previously were delivered within talk community, but will now be delivered within children's services. But we do have to accept that talk community has got to change in order for us to meet the savings that we need and for us to move forward. It's now about 6 years since it was started, and we're reviewing it, and we are saying, there are things, as somebody mentioned earlier, that
I'm going to encourage you to
Okay, I'll stop there then.
So there were two other questions. One was, please.
The conversations are different because the funding for local government has changed radically, and providers can see what is happening with local government. It's national news. Fairer funding. We've been talking about it. Our providers are well aware of the huge pressures that local government funding is under, and so when we come to those providers and say, "Look, we have to change the dynamic here," then they're fully aware of why we're saying this. And so, to answer Councillor Bartlett's question directly, everybody's aware that things have to change, and so that's what's driving the conversation to be radically different from 50, 30, 20 years ago.
Just we have to move on, but I just want to. What I was expecting you to say was something a bit more. We, as the cabinet, have kind of encouraged a different way of working. And is that, do you have a vision of a different way of working in partnership, or is it just that everybody knows there's no money around?
I was going to say, you probably want some examples, key examples of that. So, in specific to adult social care, it would be our director for adult social care, who could give us a good example.
Okay, no pressure. I think we've learnt from our savings work over the last 3-4 years. So we have developed more of a partnership approach with our providers. Yes, clearly the funding situation is there. But I think we recognise that moving to more of a strategic partnership approach is to the benefit of both for both of us, both the council and providers, as I said earlier on. So that has been very much the vision of how we are working as a directorate, in order to work in that partnership forum, recognising there are still regulations within that. But we certainly, we have ongoing engagement through our provider forums with care homes, with our domiciliary care agencies. We want to move to more of that that partnership approach. As I said to Councillor Crockett, by being flexible in that way, we can control costs, but we can also flex things then to meet needs as they change. And actually that's really important. If we get stuck into long-term arrangements which just deliver one thing, it doesn't enable us to flex appropriately. And I think our providers recognise that and want to work with us on that.
Okay. I have 3 more names down. It's nearly 25 past. I think it's probably going to be another 10 minutes on this section. So I propose to take a break now and return. We'll do another 10 minutes on revenue, and then we'll move on to capital. So it's 23 minutes past. So if everyone could be back sitting in their seats at 11:34, that would be great. And then we will be kicking off with Councillor Harvey. Can you confirm when we've paused? Okay, thank you very much. Welcome back. I hope you all had a quick and useful break. So we are now in the time that I had thought we would be allocating for capital, but there seems to be much talk about in revenue. So we're going to allow another 10 minutes for this section, and Councillor Harvey is going to kick off.
Hopefully not in every sense of the word. Yeah, I think we have been particularly generous with the amount of time being given to the capital programme, so I'm glad we've got a bit extra now. Excuse me, I'm probably going to leap about all over the place while I've got the mic and really fire a number of questions out there across the whole savings programme. So starting off, following up on some of the points that Councillor Crockett was exploring to do with savings in community wellbeing. Block contracts, I understand why that's a sensible thing to be going for. And yes, that's a big sum of money to be looking at making as a saving, but clearly the right thing to do. Block contracts do require agility and nimbleness in terms of being able to make best use of those permanently purchased beds. In the leisure sector, you've got lastminute.com, which is how hotels get their empty beds filled. Whatever the equivalent is in terms of, residential care beds, are we confident that we will be able to be nimble and agile in the way that we must be to make best use of this as a way of doing things? That's one question. The second question, which is also to you, Hilary, I'm afraid, are you sure that all the savings in the plan for community wellbeing will actually end up falling to the council? Because there are jointly funded services with through the Better Care Fund, etc., with the ICB and other partners. Are we sure that the numbers that we've got are actually going to be ours if those savings are made without sharing with others? Equality impact assessments, really important in terms of thinking through what the impact is of the changes that we're proposing to make, and there are some detailed assessments, particularly in the community and wellbeing area, reflecting the broad impact that the savings being proposed may have and how we're looking at mitigating those, and I'm really grateful to see those. They were published very late for the Cabinet Papers, and they do not form part of the agenda pack for this meeting at all. However, looking at them as a piece across all the savings areas, it does seem like some of the no's might more reasonably be yeses. And I just wonder whether, with some of the very late dates on the completion of these assessments, although some of them were done in December and could have been published a lot earlier than they were, do we have assurance that we are not under-egging the equality impact of some of the things that we're proposing? It's not the end of the world to have to do a full impact assessment and to think it through more deeply. Can we have assurance that those EIAs are properly balanced in terms of the overviews? Income. This is a net picture that we're seeing in the budget figures. We talk a lot about savings, and it's important that we do that because that's about, contracting or doing differently the services that we already provide. But increasing our ability to generate income where we can is a really important facet of, transformation and becoming, doing our business in a slightly different way. Are we confident that we are maximising and, accelerating where possible the generation of income from our services? And what is the increase next year over this year in terms of the total amount of income that's built into the budget? Because obviously we can't see it in the way it's being presented. And then to dive down into the detail, which the Chair hates. I'd like to just talk specifically about the ta-da moment from Cabinet, where there was a reveal on car parking, and some free car parking being proposed versus the expectation that we will be uplifting car parking charges for longer periods of time. It's detail, but people are interested. When I was Cabinet Member for Finance, I was being advised that technology was on its way to enable us to start charging for the amount of time that people use, rather than asking people to estimate up front what their likely length of stay is going to be in our car parks. And I know some of the online apps enable people to boost an extra hour or so if they find that they're staying for longer. But I'd like to say what's happening to that technology to enable us to charge for the time that people actually stay with us with ANPR and GPS tracking. And wouldn't that be fairer than a 30-minute for free? 30-minute for free is fine, and it maybe has a greater impact in market towns where there's a shorter distance to walk between the car parks and things that people might want to engage with. It's certainly not hugely helpful in the city, and I'd like some clarity on whether there is an intention as part of the additional charging for generating income from implementing on-street parking in the market towns, because that's something that has been resisted persistently, and it would be helpful to be really clear about whether that is staying off the table for the coming year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. To be clear, I would assess my view of detail as strong dislike, not hate. Okay, who wants to take? There were some questions around community wellbeing, so let's kick off with those.
In terms of your first question about flexibility on the beds, yes, absolutely. I've got experience of doing that in previous roles, and my service director does as well. So we will ensure that we do build in that flexibility. It's not quite lastminute.com, but there is a flexibility around need and how we use them. So yes, I believe we will achieve that. Yes, we have assessed those joint funded ones, and the savings we've identified do absolutely fall to the council, and we are assured on that. In terms of the EIAs as they relate to us, and I know Councillor Crockett raised it, I'm happy to look at them again. We have done the full ones where we've had more ticks and we've done the full ones, but I'm happy to review and look again to see whether additional ones are required.
Can I just, before Councillor Starlett comes in, and maybe you can answer this, on the EIAs, there are a couple of additional things that interest me. One is, have you looked at the kind of cumulative, so there's a kind of an impact of each of the individual savings, but have we looked at the cumulative effect to make sure that we're not sort of making very small impacts in each of the savings line? And also I'm interested in how the Cabinet has kind of used the equality impact assessments to shape its thinking, and maybe to drop some things because you thought they would have the wrong impact. But Councillor Stoddart wanted to come in anyway. So,
can I come in to address Councillor Harvey's point about income? As we mentioned in the MTFS at the beginning, para 3.4, we've identified some of the ideas that we've got, but I would like to we're aware that Scrutiny's led a working group to review income generation and commercial opportunities. And I was just wondering if the Chair might like to be able to give us an update on how what you've found out with that working group.
We said that we would feedback informally. We will present, because it was beyond. It was not just around this budget, and we will bring a final report to a future SMB. I think it's fair to say we did not find a lot of £50 notes lying around, but we did think that the issue of the culture and the approach that the council takes to the way it manages the service, the way it thinks about income, was a key opportunity, and it goes back to a point I made in the MTFS that I have not yet seen the investment in the training, the skills development, the capability, the technology that would be necessary to generate those opportunities or maximise those opportunities.
And therefore, Chair, sort of to conclude that point, it's challenging. We are not festooned with a lot of innovation within officers. We from a commercial perspective. So anything that any ward member officer can come up with from a concept of income generation, we're very welcome and open to, and at any point.
And the car parking question? Go ahead. Yep.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the 30-minute initiative that we've introduced is there for people who need to go to the shop just to pick up some chemists, bakeries, that type of thing. It's not a way that we can fund people shopping. But it's something that we said we would do, and we've done it because it's what is right with this cost of living that we're experiencing at the moment to help those that do need it, just need it to pop in to town to pick up their kids maybe. Trying to address some of Councillor Harvey's points, ANPR, further development of IT, yes, it's on the cards, but we're looking at cost again as we go forward. I know that ultimately it will save money, but it's the implementation of these costs that are going to cause problems. Income from market towns, on-street parking, yes, it would provide a lot of income, but should we not discuss it first with market town councils? I think it's discussion required at some time, but it's not something I want to impose. It's something we need to discuss. Adding hours, yes, with this 30-minute free parking, you are perfectly entitled to, and although the app situation with regard to informing of the ending of the time period has not been developed yet fully, the machines will be revised and renewed parts of it in coming months or so that we can actually do something. But if you get a notification that your 30-minute period is coming up, you can still apply for further parking time. I would love to have ANPR, pay on exit, but we're back again to the issue relating to cost and implementation. In my opinion, it's a great way that we can enable people to actually use the shops and restaurants that they want just by understanding that what they use, they pay for. And
I think you might have answered the points.
Oh, thank you. I could go on, but I won't share because you know you're pressed for time.
I think I heard you saying that you were keen to talk to market towns about.
No, I'm not keen to talk. What I'm saying is if
Sorry, can I come in there? can I come in there? No is the answer. No, no, no.
Okay. Thank you very much. Very quickly.
Yeah, thank you. My point was exactly as the leader said, and I think I said it in my little speech here. It's about discussion. If it's wanted, let's discuss it.
I think the two of you probably need to.
Just to clarify, the answer is we're not introducing it. No.
Okay, Councillor O'Driscoll, Councillor Fagan, and then we will wrap up the revenue and move on to capital. Councillor O'Driscoll.
Thank you. Just looking at the E&E savings, I just want a bit of clarification. The reallocation of directorate reserves to maintain the public rights of way, the drainage, lengthman scheme, combined with the grant utilisation, both for the bus services and the PHRG. I mean, combined there, we're looking at somewhere, I think, about 1.8 million on the savings that came out last night. That's a one-off saving, isn't it? That's a one-off saving from the total savings of 20 million that you've been talking about. And that obviously means those things aren't going to be able to happen next year if these savings are all carried over into subsequent years. For the 27-28, as Peter was talking about, as Councillor Stoddart was talking about earlier. Am I correct in that assumption that 1.8 million from E&E is a one-off saving for 26-27, and how are we going to meet that gap for subsequent years from the E&E Directorate?
Go ahead.
Thank you. So we're referring to saving E3 in the economy and environment.
E3, E6, E7.
Yeah. Thank you. So additional funding was provided between the provisional settlement and the final settlement in 24-25, and a cabinet decision was made at that point to allocate that additional funding to those three areas that have been identified: the public rights of way, drainage and the Lensman scheme, with a total contribution to the revenue budget to increase it to deliver services of approximately £945,000. That funding was not recurrent, yet Cabinet committed to maintaining that level of expenditure in 25-26 and will do so again in 26-27. In terms of 27 and 28, that will need to be a decision that's taken as part of the development of that revenue budget, but recognising that where funding is not recurrent and that is currently supporting expenditure that does not meet a statutory service in its purest form, that those will need to be decisions to be made as part of each year's development of the budget. So it's transparent here. At the moment, it is planned to be funded next year, and it's explicit in its funding source around that. It's not recurrent funding, and therefore a decision will need to be taken in future years.
And the grant utilisation, please.
It's the same response.
So effectively, at the present time, that's 1.8 million that is likely to be a cut to E&E if, as Councillor Stoddart has said, that 20 million is going to carry through right the way through to 2030, and perhaps people should be preparing for the public rights of way, drainage and lengthsman schemes to be cut in subsequent years.
I think as part of development of the budget, again, the services that need to be delivered will be reviewed, and priorities will be established and funding sources will be aligned to meet priorities, but that will be a political decision in future years, recognising that the funding that we receive continues to reduce over that multi-year period.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fagan, I have one, unless you ask it, I have one question to finish this off, and then we'll move on to capital. No, you go.
Can I go now? Okay, that's fine. So just in terms of the savings from the Children and Young People's Directorate, and I think it's quite an apt point to say that congratulations on the Ofsted, because it just shows that the improvement journey and the improvement plan has worked, and that the reduction in social worker agency posts, that saving can be made due to the stability of the service. So well done to everybody involved in that. However, the one that I'm slightly not confused, anxious about is the C3 savings. So that's the SEND staff, and that's £123,000, which was planned response to recognising increasing workloads, funding found through grant for fixed period pending SEND reforms. Now, we all know that the government is kicking all sorts of issues like SEND reforms down the road and down the road. So what happens if this the SEND reforms don't happen, and then we find that actually what we need is additional staffing for these posts? Do we end up going back to sort of agency staff and then incurring additional costs? So that it was my question around that. How sort of secure do we think that these savings are around that? And then I had a second question just in terms of the home to school transport, which is again a SEND issue, involves working with schools a lot, but actually sits in the economy and environment directorate as a £2 million saving. That who has oversight of that? If that is does it sit under children's? Does it sit under the cabinet? Who is actually monitoring that? So there's two questions around that. Thank you.
These look like questions for Councillor Powell in the first instance.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Fagan, for your question. Just if I could drop back to one, I think it's an important point. Councillor Harvey's point about equality impact assessments, and then your additional point, Chair, about the cumulative impact. I can give you absolute assurance in Children's that the work done on the equality impact assessment has been appropriate, and we are confident that the impact is not significant, such that then goes on to require the full equality impact assessment. And we have absolutely considered the cumulative impact and can confirm that there is none. So that's that point. To Councillor Fagan's question about the SEND staff. So there were a number of posts that were put in place but were never filled. So that's the saving that has been made because we've simply withdrawn those posts. We have used some grant funding from the Families First grant to provide some capacity in support of the work that needs to be done. And that's quite a lot of detailed work, particularly on educational health and care plans in terms of the assessment, writing the reports, agreeing those reports, reviewing, adjustments, etc. And indeed, in certain circumstances where we go on to tribunal, we, as a local authority, Herefordshire, are well engaged with the SEND reform programme and their team. And you will be aware, of course, that we were subject of a joint Ofsted and CQC inspection on SEND and our related processes earlier on during the year. Liz Farr and her team have a good sense of the trajectory and the direction of SEND reform. Of course, we need to wait for those SEND reforms to come through. That's anticipated to be in the spring of this year, but we will wait and see. From our conversations, we are confident that government understand that there needs to be some improvement in the efficiency and conduct of that very detailed work in compiling education, health and care plans. So in answer to the question, are we confident? We are as confident as we can be in that we don't know the detail of reform, but we have a sense of what it's going to contain. And currently, we are coping with the level of work that we need to as it sits, expecting that it will reduce moving forwards under those reforms.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. The other question was the home to school transport.
Yes, sorry.
So I'll start and hand over to Philip. So,
but just so
Sure.
I think one question that we are very interested in, because it came up at 1:45 as well, is which is the cabinet member who is keeping an eye on this?
So it's shared between myself and Philip, but actually Philip is leading on it, but I've remained actively engaged and interested in it.
So to answer your question, this is a real challenge area, and it's got a growth demand which is causing us major problems. So we've been looking at taking savings from the taxi element of it for over the last 6 months, ever since the budget started, and we've had numerous meetings with taxi companies, etc. To the point that we've looked at in-house provision with Hoople to be able to be the provision of that. So if we're going to take the savings, we have to find the best option to do it. It is not helped by, as Councillor Powell suggested, in the way that we expected that we would have provision for pupils nearer to home. And that's not going to happen anytime soon, which means we're going to have to continue with the demand that we have to meet. We have to meet that demand in the most cost-effective way we can. We're on it. We have quite a challenging savings target with it, and we think we are able to manage that saving. So it's an area, if we did not do anything, the cost would go from probably 7.5 million to 9.5 million this year just on taxi services, which is a colossal sum of money. So we are on it. We're working with it. We work across cabinet members to make sure that there is more input than just one member. Thank you.
And I believe Daniel can confirm this for me, but we've got a briefing planned for February for SMB and Children's Scrutiny members on the plans to manage this.
Correct. There's an agreement for the briefing. I haven't fixed a date just yet, but as soon as I have one, I'll share it with the committee members.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think that draws to close on the revenue budget. So that leaves us with about half an hour to focus on the capital programme. I'm sure there will be some members who have lots of questions here. I think I'll kick off by asking about the bypass phase 1 Southern Link Road. So obviously your administration is keen on that. I personally stood on a platform in favour of a bypass, but it's being funded through prudential borrowing. You're increasing the amount of prudential borrowing. So what is the argument that you're going to make to the council about why this is still a sensible way to fund this project, given the impact on the revenue budget at a time when we're highly constrained? So Councillor Stoddart, I assume Councillor Price will want to come in as well, but Councillor Stoddart first.
Chair, could I ask that we're here today to discuss this year's capital programme. The £40.3 million is part of the existing capital programme voted by full council on the 5th of February last year and approved. That's in the bank. What we're here today, are you wishing now to address the additional £5 million that we're looking to add in this year? Is that the issue you have?
I think it's legitimate to ask about both of them, because you will present a capital programme to council, and that whether or not council agreed the previous capital programme, it will still have to agree that the new capital programme. So I don't see why we should just forget about borrowing that we may have previously, because the circumstances may have changed, and I don't see why we should assume that we are committed to carry on borrowing. So I think we need to keep making that case if there's a case to be made.
So the first point would be is that had the previous administration not cancelled the existing bypass, we wouldn't be borrowing any money whatsoever, because it'd be there. Point one. The reason that we have put this money forward is because we've tied, and we've spoke many times about the importance of growth, to deliver growth to Herefordshire. The fundamental bit, I've just literally gone through a heart bypass operation where my heart was struggling because of blockages. It's I now feel 100% better, thank you to the NHS. It's been a fantastic package. I'm an example of Hereford City and the south of Herefordshire. We have got traffic that is clogging up and is actually impacting on the economic ability of Hereford and Herefordshire to deliver the growth we wish to do. And therefore, the reason that the bypass is there is to deliver that growth, so that we can now actually then start to look, it's not just a bypass, it's an economic growth corridor, which will provide more houses, which will deliver additional income through council tax, and it will deliver more businesses, which will also then deliver more income for us through business rates. I'll then defer across to my colleague.
Let's just talk about the £5 million that is in this budget for this year coming up. The £40.3 million, or the 10.3 of it originally, is funding all of the exercise in getting to a point of delivery. We are in engagement with contractors at the present moment for a two-stage approach. One is to take a look at the cost of the whole scheme and delivery of it, and the first part is to check the design and make sure that it's compliant in all ways and it can be delivered. The £5 million is put in to make sure that there is sufficient funding should that exercise increase any demand on the estimate for the road, which was always an indicative amount. So whilst we have potentially at this stage not knowing how much it will finish up as being costed once that exercise has been done, but we have to have sufficient money in the budget to be able to award a contract, whatever we find as we go forward. There are, of course, other means of looking at funding, but at this stage, this is a budget. We have to have sufficient funding in the budget to be able to proceed with the programme. Following on from Councillor Stoddart, we have to look to the future. We cannot just keep putting this down the road. At some point, the only river bridge across the River Wye is going to be a problem. It is halfway through its expected life. It is coming up for maintenance issues. Those maintenance issues will cause more and more problem to the traffic in Hereford. So, we're looking to the future. You can't live in today forever. We have to move on.
I've got Councillor Stark and Councillor Harvey, and now Councillor O'Driscoll. But I'll just ask a kind of supplementary question, which is, what is the level at which this would become a bad business case? So, at some point, we'd have to borrow so much money that even though it would bring all these potential benefits, it just wouldn't be worth. So, roughly, where are we compared to that maximum amount?
Well, you're asking a hypothetical question. I'll give you a hypothetical answer. We'll wait and see what is thrown up into the situation once we have a contractor that has come up and looked at the design, compared it to the compliance of today's standards, what that cost will be, and we will review it when it comes along. We've put in an extra amount in the budget just to cover for being able to do that work. You can't just go along and say we can't award a contract because we haven't got sufficient money in the funds. We will find the funding elsewhere to be able to do this and complete the river crossing and the western bypass. It's looking to the future. We all look to the future. If you've ever had anything to do with running a business yourself, you're always looking to the future, but you deal day to day with the problems you have on each day. But fundamentally, where you get into tomorrow, next year, next decade, next generation, etc. So you have to move forward. You just can't put your head in the blocks and say we're not going to do it.
Okay, Councillor Stark.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I want to develop this point into a more general point about the relationship between the capital programme, the revenue budget and the TMS, because as the MTFS says, it's important to have those three aligned. There's a 44 million addition made to the capital programme this year. What I would like to know, and I'm sure the SMB would like to know, is that allocation of 44 million taking full account of the need to use the capital programme to reduce the pressures on the revenue budget? And is the supporting TMS actually flexible enough to allow the sort of borrowing that you might need to make if it was agreed that there would be a case for more borrowing to reduce the revenue pressures even more? So you've got this 44 million. I don't know how you've arrived at why that it should be that 44 million in addition, but I'd like to have assurance that you've looked at the alignment and that everything has been done to utilise the capital programme to reduce the pressures on the revenue budget, and that the TMS is being used flexible enough to do that as well. Thank you.
Councillor Stoddart.
Councillor Stark, I can give you my most clear assurance, yes it is. So I would refer you back to sitting here last February when I explained through to Cabinet and then to full council that this current year we were looking at our capital programme through a new lens, that of impact on revenue. So we put in things like minibuses, we put the then John Hayden, now John Venn building, that sort of thing. We looked at looking into there. What I can say is this year we have looked at the existing capital programme and we removed a number of items that we believe are not relevant for the immediate future. But what we have done is the items that we've added in for the 44 million this year that we're looking to get approval for is £10 million for street housing. This is going to address the issue and build on the success of the John Venn building, which will save us approximately £480,000 a year on revenue by putting, and also actually deliver a much better service. Rather than putting families with young children into B&Bs and hotels, we'll put them into accommodation that we control with workers there to support them. So we're looking to develop that and carry that on, which will also then have significant savings on our community wellbeing revenue on that side. In addition, we've then got £5 million for the relocation of the PRU and also £5 million for a new alternate provision. £10 million allocated to address challenging areas within the Young People Directorate. That will reduce significantly. So the cost of educating a young person from an AP provision in the county is £16,800. The cost of providing outside is approximately £75,000. That's £60,000 per child per year, not including transportation. And more importantly, it's right and proper that we educate the young people of Herefordshire in Herefordshire. So that's those two there. The £3 million for estate works improvements it's a small amount, but it continues to make sure that our council buildings are maintained in a safe and appropriate manner. And then £5 million of highways improvements. One thing that I certainly hear as I walk around the county before my operation, hopefully soon after as well, is that individuals in the county are noticing that the roads are improving. And that is down to Councillor Durkham and to Councillor Hercombe, who have effortlessly put forward that programme. And then lastly, we're looking at a small amount for IT improvements, which will improve our cyber resilience and actually ensure that we receive payments digitally supported, because we have to go through the PSSI standards, etc. So that's what those aspects will deliver, easing onto the revenue programme. I hope.
But the MTFS, I think, from what we've heard before, doesn't reflect some of those investments. Am I right? That we haven't been able to quantify them yet. But the point I was making, Councillor Stoddart, you have provided reassurance that you've looked at every aspect of the capital programme, and this is the maximum that you could come up with in terms of the area where you could actually put forward as reducing the impact on the revenue savings.
Well, this is the optimum balance that I felt we had from delivering impact, but being prudent and being responsible in our borrowing.
Okay, Rachel, could you just clarify whether the revenue savings that Councillor Stoddart has been talking about there are reflected in the MTFS?
I mean, to be clear, some of those future costs we are seeking to avoid, so they're not currently built into base budget. But just to provide some assurance on the MTFS Treasury Management Strategy, we are of course required to demonstrate and report on our compliance with our Treasury and prudential indicators. And we do that through our quarterly monitoring reports. There's a Treasury update as an appendix to each of those quarterly reports. So we monitor continually throughout the year our borrowing position, the impact on the revenue position, and our compliance within those SIPFA prudential indicators, working closely with our Treasury management advisors. And you'll see those are explained clearly here. And SMB have received additional information on that in the past.
I just want to make one further point before you go on. Yes, some of those indicators were well below them, Rachel, and it just seems to me that there could be an area of flexibility there where we could be borrowing more to actually address the very serious gaps we have going forward.
What I would say is, if you look at the trend of those indicators, obviously we've been explicit in this Treasury Management Strategy and the MTFS about an increased need to borrow, driven partly through our day-to-day cash flow requirements, but also importantly because of the DSG deficit, which will stand at £37.5 million by the end of this financial year. That gap between the funding we receive and the amounts that we're required to pay out, as well as an element driven by the capital programme. So you will see that some of those indicators where we have previously been well under are starting to move incrementally in line with the information that we've shared. Absolutely, can we do more? And I know that Cabinet are keen to start those conversations from April as part of the future financial strategy to understand where we can maximise our ability to borrow given the Council's current low borrowing position, and balance that need for investment with the impact on the revenue budget and the priorities of the Council plan, and that need to continue to address those cost pressures in the revenue budget.
I feel like we might have explored all of this, but Councillor Stoddart, last word.
I go back very quickly as well. So just to remind you that the TMS that is approved by Council, that places security and liquidity before yield. So we are very, and it mentions in our risk strategy that we will adopt a very low risk base approach, and any change to that will require full Council approval.
Okay, I have Councillor Harvey, then O'Driscoll, then Bartlett, and that may be it. Councillor Harvey.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've again got a little handful of questions. I think the first one I'd like to do is follow up on the line of inquiry that you initiated, Chair, on the additional funding for the Western Bypass. You're right. It's there's quite a lot that's in the programme already, and this is just an additional provision, and it is in an out year. But I think the nub that you were trying to get to was how much is too much? When would it be too much? And I think what we all need to remember is that when the forecast for the cost of this was around 27 million, the Department of Transport required a value for money business case to be made for the road to be built and for that to stand alone. Now, you know, now we've got a figure of over 40, and that case was never made. Let's be clear, that case was never capable of being made. And that's why it got cancelled, because that reality was recognised by the administration at the time. Now we've got it back on the table and it's being entirely funded by Herefordshire people's money. I don't know whether that's going to get round the Department of Transport requirement to deliver a value for money standalone business case for this section of tarmac, but I think it is a valid question. When is it too much? When is the bill too high? And we haven't got a business case in front of us, and yet money is being spent, despite the promise always being with the capital programme that a full business case will be put before decision makers and the decision made publicly before money gets spent, and that isn't what's happening now. So I think there are some issues in terms of how money is able to be released from the capital programme without business cases being put forward and approved, and that being done visibly and in public. But you know, I'm just going to leave it there on this one, because you know there is a massive difference of opinion here, which will play out in other forums to this one. I think there are. It's interesting to see the two investments in the education area for the pupil referral unit and the alternative provision centre. It looks like there's a really sporty time frame for those in terms of acquiring buildings and actually making something happen on that. And I would seek to be reassured that what's down in those business cases in terms of time frame is actually achievable, because we know the glacial pace at which these things move, even in terms of some of the investments that we've had to make for care leavers accommodation and that sort of thing, and for homeless. So, are we actually capable of meeting these timeframes that we've got in the business cases that are put forward? And I noticed the Historic Building Fund. I do question whether we're actually properly reflecting the reality of the overall costs here for these particular buildings. And I noticed that it's this £5 million investment is being stated as being funded entirely by return on investment. And I can't actually see in the outline business case, apologies if I've missed it, quite where that return on investment is going to give 100% payback on that £5 million.
Okay. Who wants to take the further questions about the bypass business case?
Yeah, I will, Chair. We're at a point in time, we're in 2026. We over the last 60 years, the bypass has been mentioned time and time again. I know that this particular budget item is just on the SLR, the original SLR, and currently what we call phase 1. If we go back to the LEP funding, which got the £27 million, there was a business case put forward to achieve the £27 million, which when cancelled, it was lost. And I have to point back again to the fact that when it was lost by one vote. And after the vote, a number of councillors absolutely said on the recording that they weren't sure that they knew what they were voting for. And that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, let's try and stick to the budget.
But at the end of the day, as I've said before, if we do not go forward with this, it will become a debate again and again and again. And every time you debate it, the price goes up and up and up. So at what point is too much? If we went back 5 years and 10 years, we could have had the same expression of it's too much, but I guarantee you that today it is a lot more than it has ever been in the past. And if we don't do it, then we have a moratorium on housing, mandatory housing, that we will not be able to deliver because we do not have the infrastructure to support it. as the Western Bypass. The Western Bypass is the fundamental area of it. The phase 1 is the first part of it. We may or may not have to fund it in its entirety, depending on how things work out. And as we've said time and time again, there will be a full business case before we start doing it this year. That is to happen.
Okay, thank you. And the deliverability of the, especially these items that Councillor Harvey identified. So, Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Chair. So the business cases specifically outline the intention to acquire and repurpose commercial premises for two reasons, which are also outlined in the business case. Obviously, acquiring and repurposing is both substantially more efficient in terms of overall cost, but of course, acquiring a site and building from new will take substantially longer. We are actively engaged with economy and environment on identifying suitable sites. We, as you use the expression, we intentionally want to be racy about it because it's imperative that we provide a better local facility for a significant number of children who are currently out of county. So we want to be ambitious about it. The reality is identification of a suitable buildings that we will be able to acquire is what will hold us up, but it's in the business case. That's our intention.
And the historic building fund return on investment.
So that's coming through the street asset review, where we're looking at all of our assets and potentially disposal of some of them, which will fund that. That's return on investment there.
Sorry, I'm not sure. Councillor Harvey doesn't understand either. Do you want to ask the question?
Yeah, I mean, if there's going to be a capital receipt as a consequence of selling other property holdings that the council that the council owns, how does that fall within the business case for this particular investment? I was kind of expecting it to be self-contained. I mean, let's declare that there's going to be a capital receipt elsewhere in the figures, but to say we're going to sell a load of other stuff that isn't historic buildings or whatever, and that's going to generate a capital receipt, and we're going to set that off against this as an investment, is kind of mixing apples and oranges, isn't it?
I would disagree. It's not. John, would you like to address that final point?
Yeah, hi. I'm supposed to introduce myself, Chair. I'm John Hobbs, perhaps that's my name there, so that's fine. Yeah, so the idea is to do a complete review of the stock and the estate and to look at income and expenditure and disposals and then review what we have at the end of that and use that income to fund whatever overhanging debt we've got in relation to the heritage buildings restoration. The rules around, what we can do with receipts and that kind of thing. The 151 can give us the constraints.
I think I'd be much more comfortable seeing that kind of combed out and separate, because you could lump the entire kind of asset portfolio of the council under that as an argument. I'm wholly in favour of reviewing our property holdings and making sure that they're washing their face financially, or that we are sort of selling them and getting a capital receipt and doing something more worthwhile with the funds. But I'm uncomfortable with representing it this way in terms of a business case for a new capital investment.
I think it is at least unclear. So it at the very least it could be made clearer what is going on here. I think, and we could make a recommendation on that. Okay, Rachel, very quickly.
Yeah, just to highlight, there's an outlined strategic business case for this, which is just that at the moment, an outlined strategic business case. It identifies that spend for this addition will take place in 27-28, and it clearly states that an estate strategy will be developed in support of the full business case to identify the long-term source of income to repay this loan. And that is exactly the point that the Director of Economy and Environment has just made in terms of that plan to do that in order to support that expenditure from 27-28.
Okay, I think we'll leave that there, and unless you have anything else to add, John.
Yeah, I mean, all I was going to say was that somehow we want to get to a position where we've got a balanced portfolio of property where rather than mothballing things are working, they're efficient, and they're providing the maximum income or public utilisation that we can get. And so I think we do need to look at it in the round. And if we need to spend some money and create some debt or whatever to make those work, then provided that it stands up in business case terms, then we do it. Of course, what we're trying to do here is avoid the debt by balancing the portfolio. So, and that we will do in a very transparent way with members.
Okay, I think very, very quickly.
Yeah, I think this kind of plays back to the point that I made earlier in the meeting about having a look at a net position and not being able to see where we've got increased, ambitions as far as generating income is concerned. And a capital receipt is another form of, liquidating assets and creating a, money where out of a physical asset. And, the debate about what the best thing is to do with that money and actually being able to see that money coming in as well as the money that we see here going out more transparently, I think is kind of going to be important, because we're going to need to make every pound count and make sure we're doing the right thing with the publicly owned assets that we have. So I think it's just part of a bit of a plea from me for there being visibility of that income and capital receipt position in the way that figures are presented alongside, rather than just a netting out of it all, because our costs are always going to exceed the income figures.
Okay, I think we have explored that. I think you get a sense where the committee is on that. Just two more members on this bit, and then we will move to recommendations. So, Councillor O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Chair. Just looking at the highways maintenance backlog, the capital strategy identifies that there's a backlog currently running into very high figures, hundreds of millions of pounds. Is the current level of investment in any way actually biting into that backlog? Or is it really slowing down deterioration while that backlog continues to rise, please?
I'll have a go at that based on my experience in other places. But if you do ask that question, what's the backlog, you'll always get a very big number. I mean, highways deteriorate at a rate per annum, and the objective is to try and intervene at a level that's better than the rate of deterioration, and then you'll get net improvement. If that cost is based on full depth reconstruction of the highway, then that's all going to make it a big number. But there are much smarter ways of maintaining highways now, such as structural patching and high quality surface dressing, because surface dressing has come on a lot in recent years, and that's like preemptive maintenance, in the sense that it protects the surface of the road, provides good friction surfaces, and helps with drainage. So you might extend the life of a highway by 10-15 years doing that. So a combination of using the most economical techniques and good asset management should mean that we can get on the positive side of it. And a lot of what's been done in Herefordshire over the last period with the amount invested has produced some very significant improvements with quite a bit of full depth reconstruction. Now we're in a structural patching and surface dressing phase. Seems to be more of that going on. Quality's going up, and I think we have a good way of programming those works and making sure they're delivered. And I think the change in June, when we get the new public realm contractor, we'll see a change there as well.
Councillor Stoddart wants to come in on this as well.
I think the first time it's on record of someone recording a complaint about Herefordshire roads was in the 1920s. So it's nothing new we're dealing with. What I am aware of, the challenge that we have is we have got in excess of 2,000 miles of road, and we've got a population of 189,000. In Worcester, they've got 600,000 and 1,200 miles of road. So straight away there you can see the challenge. The last figure I had in my head was that we have resurfaced or addressed something like 86 miles, which is approximately 8% of our roads. which is the equivalent of going from here to Warrington. So and that's what we've done in 3 years. So it's a challenging figure we're working with, but we are addressing it. And as John said, what we're able to now do is look at the age of our roads, and where we are now with our funding is when we have to spend the significant cost to redo the road, which is the 32.8 pounds per square metre, we will do. But what we're able to do by doing the surface dressing that John alluded to, we're able to extend the life of the road at a cost of £4.80 per square metre. So we get 8 times the distance done by doing that, and that's what we're pushing forward on.
Just before I bring you in, I have to challenge something you said. If you think 1920 was the first time that there are complaints, I urge you to look into the Ledbury Turnpike riots. Councillor O'Driscoll.
I appreciate that, and I also appreciate, you know, it's visible, the difference that some of the investments made in some of the roads, certainly in Ross, we've noticed it. What I'm trying to get at, are we actually biting into that backlog? Is the level of investment sufficient to, in any way, make an improvement? You know, you've said it's hundreds of millions of pounds when you look at everything in terms of what needs to be done, and I appreciate it's taking everything up to a particularly high standard. But is it? How long would we need to maintain the level of investment that we currently have in order to at least ways bite into that backlog and hopefully move things forward, so we're not just slowing the rate of deterioration?
I would defer to John on that sort of figures of how long. What I can say is every year in Cabinet, Councillor Hurcombe and Councillor Hurcombe deliver fighting strongly to improve the roads. But equally, what we're around the Cabinet, we're looking at all the other priorities we're looking at. So therefore, but it's a very, because we all know, we've all been on doorsteps, and what we get on the doorsteps is roads. But Councillor Gandy fights strongly for adult social care, and so on and so forth, and etc. It's a challenge all the time, but it sits very much at our front and centre of our conscience. But if I can defer to John, if you've got any sort of figures of how long, John.
So I don't have figures to hand, but the condition of our roads is judged by scanner data, which takes place from certain frequencies, and we report that data to DFT. It's never a complete picture because it only does one side of the road when it does it, and it's only when you do the other side and it catches up that you get a better sense. But the effect of the investment over the last few years won't be seen in that data until it reports probably after March, or I can't remember when the dates are, but it should be publicly available, the scanner data that shows the condition of our roads. And what they do is they show the percentage of network in need of maintenance, and the go-get target, the thing that we'll be working on with the public realm contractor and the contractors who we use to do planned maintenance, is to attack those numbers and improve it. Generally, the picture you see is that A's and B's are generally in quite good order, and it's C's and unclassifieds where you need the attention. That's usually the issue in rural counties, and then there are other methods to try and improve that. Scanner data doesn't. It measures undulation. It measures a particular sort of dynamic, and it's not always truly indicative of potholes, but you know, it's the kind of data that's used, and I think it you know, with that investment, we should see a significant improvement in that condition.
I think we're going to have to move on. But we did explore that a bit, I think. And the last word on this will be Councillor Bartlett.
Thank you, Chair. Just to reiterate my previous point, that I'm still wish that we would see coming forward a business case soon for our own care home to relieve pressures there. Very surprised that we haven't got much in the capital budget around that. And the other thing, the last meeting with SMB, we did actually recommend, you know, the Cabinet adopt a bolder approach to borrowing to relieve pressures on the revenue budget. And we see some of that here, you know, we've got around the schools and what have you. short breaks as well. I'm really pleased that we're getting more back into that market ourselves. Pulled out quite significantly about 10 or 11 years ago, left it to the market. But when I look at these business cases and thinking about wanting to know more, as Councillor Stark does, what is the impact on our revenue budget, because our revenue budget is really fragile. And I look at the tables, estimated costs and funding sources. Each business case, quite rightly, has a projection of the costs, etc., and where the funds are coming from. But all of those tables are different. There's no standard table across any of those business cases that gives a reflection of what that impact is going to be on the revenue budget. I mean, certainly for the bypass, there is no impact. There's no line for it. And I understand that return on investment is not always going to be applicable, but as Councillor Harvey pointed out, you know, the return on investment for the heritage buildings that is being funded in the future, it's difficult to see where it is. So I'm wondering, Chair, in order to understand the impact of these proposed business cases, should we not be having a much better standardised breakdown of those projected costs and funding sources and return on investment, so that across the board we can actually see a more quantitative approach to how we're working out what's a good business case and what isn't.
Okay. So Councillor Gandhi wants to come in on this.
I just wanted to address the issue of the care home and why it's not in the capital programme. So work has been ongoing for several months now around this business case, and I think it was in the previous year's business case as well, including discussions with the market. Providers have indicated that they would effectively provide the build and that we would then staff and provide the support. So that's why it's not in the business case, because that for us would be a much more financially attractive offer than what us building it ourselves. So obviously those discussions are ongoing. If they fail to materialise, well then we will obviously have to bring it back for inclusion in the capital programme. But at the moment we have got some very positive feedback that providers are interested in actually building this for us.
I think, so that's very helpful, thank you. I think it's also interesting to reflect on if I think the Cabinet wants the Council to behave in that more flexible, more and I think SMB support that. So just thinking about how we can make sure that members understand what's going on, because obviously if it's a capital investment we will see it, but if it's a partnership where someone else, so I don't know if, but I think that's a thing to reflect on. And then I guess the very specific question about whether we can be more standardised and clearer about the revenue inputs and outputs on the capital programme. I think that who would like to take that? Councillor Powell.
So just to specifically talk to the two cases, the two business cases with regard to alternative education provision, they within that business case we've attempted to articulate exactly that. So what would be the return on investment? But I think it's the first and most important thing to say about investing in educational placements for our children is these investments would enable our children to be located in their community, in the county, when currently many of them are out of county. And to use a couple of examples of the amounts of finance involved in that, as part of establishing a Tier 3 provision, sometimes known as pupil referral unit, that would enable us then to repurpose the two buildings that we are currently using for that. And currently, we have over 40 children travelling out of county to one location at a cost of £2.2 million a year for the placement and additional transport costs. And another placement has 9 children there per year, and the transport costs associated with that are substantial. So through our business cases, we've attempted to articulate over the longer term, so the business cases detail £12 million, and we've projected forward saying the return on that investment would be returned within 5 years.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think, Rachel, possibly the last word on all of this.
The last word on everything, that's some power, Chairperson. What I would say in response to the the feedback that we've had on the way that information is presented, this is an award-winning council in terms of financial reporting, and we continue to evolve and improve the way that we present and the way that we share information with members and with residents. And I think if you look back at the financial reporting journey that we have gone on over the last 5 years, you will see a stark difference between the information that was in the public domain back then and the way that we present things now. And that's been nationally recognised. I think we can always improve, and we will certainly look to ensure there is consistency across those business cases, improve the value and the links with the revenue budget, and you have my commitment that we will continue to do that over forthcoming financial years, again leading by best practice and example across the sector.
Okay, thank you very much. And I do think, certainly I have thought that the financial reporting this year had additional clarity and was very helpful. I also liked the sort of the additional information around savings and scheduling that came out only yesterday. But given that we are in a time when we're going to have to keep producing savings plans, I hope that that could be sort of normalised, I think. So that's all the time we have on to this discussion. I'd like to thank Cabinet and officers for all of the hard work in getting us to this draft budget and for coming and appearing here. Look forward to coming to your next Cabinet meeting and seeing how you have responded to this discussion, the recommendations that we make. You are all free to, you're welcome to stay for our discussion and recommendations, but you are all free to go. Thank you very much for your time. We've got about 15 minutes or less to discuss your recommendations. Let us pause the live stream because it's a bit messy for people looking in. Welcome back. So we have discussed and we have some draft recommendations. The scrutiny officer is going to read them into the record and then we will take a vote on them.
Thank you, Chair. The recommendations are as follows. There are 5 recommendations in total. 1. The Executive should conclude an exercise to identify recurrent savings for the medium-term financial strategy period by the end of September 2026. 2. Medium-term financial strategy risks should reflect the most current financial information known to the Executive at the time of publication and should include savings known to be at risk. 3. The medium-term financial strategy should report what scenario planning has been undertaken and highlight the key sensitivities in the medium-term position. 4. The Executive should report separately savings, initiatives funding from reserves and grants, and planned additional income. And finally, 5. The Executive should report income and expenditure at sub-directorate level in the Directorate Budget Position Statements.
Okay, I'll propose these as a block. Can someone second them? Councillor Crockett. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Item 9 is to consider the work programme. We've just had a discussion which suggests that we need to go and do some more work on the work programme. So I'd like you to recommend that we adopt the work programme as it is, and then we'll do some work informally and bring a revised work programme back. Councillor Crockett?
Yeah, just the one part on the Healthcare and Wellbeing Scrutiny Committee. We didn't have a meeting in January, so that needs to be updated.
Okay.
We've got one in February because the reports weren't available.
Right. Is everyone happy with that course of action? All those in favour? Thank you. The date of the next meeting is not, as it is stated in the papers, 19th of March, because the Cabinet have moved their meeting. So we are looking at Monday, the 30th of March at 2 p.m. That will be, I think Cabinet is on the 26th, something like that. So, Liz, yeah.
Sorry, I might have dropped asleep for a second, but do we not need to insert something to do with a specific look at people as one of our responsibilities in our work programme?
It's on the work programme, but absolutely we definitely need to look at that. We had it in principle to come in the June, July, but I'm happy. So I agree completely. So I'm that's okay. Thank you very much.